Riddle me this. Is there some kind of a rule these days that at least one character in a Batman franchise has to be incomprehensible? I am incredibly uncomfortable right now. How do I get this thing off? It's like duct tape to my face now. I did not think this through.
We've had a lot of different Batman over the years. Fortunately, I don't think we need to, nor is it fair to judge the Matt Reeves Batman against every iteration that's come before. But I do think it's important it stands on its own, and I think it can differentiate itself in 3 main arenas. Let's tackle the first one. When it comes to themes, tone, and setting, Christopher Nolan changed the game for Batman. So when it comes to these elements, that's the yardstick by which Matt Reeves is going to be measured. The Nolan trilogy was focused on Bruce Wayne's growth and trauma, and the impact of fear on people and their choices. Christopher Nolan made a small but particularly notable change to Batman's origin to really drive this home. His parents' death was partially Bruce's fault. At least, he had reason to believe so. His fear during the opera led to their early emergence into the alley, and that, in turn, led to their deaths. So his quest to embrace and weaponize fear is also an attempt to make up for his own mistakes and cover up his trauma. Nolan's Gotham City was built with a very strong post-9/11 influence. Not only is Bruce driven by his fear, but all the villains in that trilogy are some form of terrorist. The trilogy is bookended with Ra's al Ghul and Bane, both characters being radical fanatics to a cause that is arguably borderline religious or cultic. League of Shadows. They believed they could and should tear down Gotham City, a stand-in for the Western world, because they had a moral obligation to do so. And of course, The Dark Knight introduced us to a different, more personal form of terror with the Joker.
It's gone.
Heath Ledger's iconic villain had a more personal ideology, clearly trying to prove a point to validate his own trauma, which is one of the many things that made him a fantastic foil for that version of Bruce Wayne.
This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object.
The picture of Gotham City that Nolan painted for us was corrupt, but in a fairly traditional sense. Straightforward gangsters ran the street and bought themselves politicians and police, while foreign businessmen like Lau manipulated the city's financial levers. Meanwhile, philanthropic white knights, like Bruce's parents and true-hearted cops, fought the good fight. It wasn't totally black and white, but the gray almost always resulted from the outside malevolent forces pushing inward. So, in 2022, what themes and framework does Matt Reeves need to offer up for his Batman in Gotham City? Looking at our societal conflict over the last few years, I think, gives us a pretty clear idea. Most of the issues we're concerned with as a society right now come down to legacy. If and how the previous generation's choices impact us now, and what we can or should do about them. Questions of systemic racism, stagnant wages, climate change, corporate profiteering, regardless of where you stand on these issues, they are, in large part, the millennial dilemma. We're getting a millennial Batman, as weird as that is to think, so I think it's only appropriate that he wrestles with some questions that are kind of a mirror to these. Instead of a focus on fear and personal trauma, I think we should be getting a Batman who is seeking the true root of evil and pain in his city. A Batman who's wrestling with the legacy his family has left behind for him, and trying to figure out how the hell to carve a new path forward. He should be conflicted, vulnerable, and really, really f***ing angry. Batman's antagonist also should really hammer doubt into Bruce's brain. And I think the Riddler was the perfect choice for this. Who better to sow doubt in Batman and the audience than the villain whose entire shtick is literally asking tough questions? But more than just creating mystery and mayhem for Batman, I think it's going to be very important that the Riddler is right in the end. Or at the very least, we need to doubt that Riddler was wrong. Which brings me to the next piece of the puzzle the Batman needs to get right. Basically every Batman movie we've ever had has been a fairly straightforward action flick, and arguably a few comedies here and there.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
Yes, there have been varying degrees and types. Nolan leaned more grounded and militaristic. Snyder went with a fairly grand and bold comic book style, and the Keaton films had a blend between noir and zany. But all in all, action is the dominant genre. What we need now is a mystery, or more precisely, a murder mystery conspiracy thriller action flick. Yeah, we still need loads of action, obviously. It's a Batman movie, and the footage so far seems to deliver on that. But we need secrets too. plot twists and a mystery to solve. And with the choice of the Riddler as our villain, and from the way that Matt Reeves is talking about it, I'm hopeful that's exactly what he's going to deliver. The world's greatest detective is one of Batman's most prominent monikers, and yet we've never really seen that in the movies. Snyder didn't touch it. Nolan gave the brainpower to Lucius Fox, but I want to see the Batman piecing together clues for himself. I think we all do. And again, Riddler is the perfect villain for a detective Batman. Which brings us to the last thing this film needs to really set it apart. Michael Keaton brought a calculating, barely contained rage to the Batman.
Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Val Kilmer brought A-grade brooding. Clooney brought some charm and a lot of unintentional, or maybe intentional, campiness. Christian Bale, of course, brought realism and his distinctive growl.
Where are they?
And Affleck brought, I don't know, a CrossFit routine? Robert Pattinson and Matt Reeves have to add something new to Batman. They need to show us something we haven't seen before. Pattinson's Batman, oh my god, Patman. Is anyone calling him Patman yet? We had Batfleck, which doesn't make any sense, but Patman? That's freaking perfect. Patman. Am I the first one to think of it? Point is, Rob Pattinson needs to add some new depth to Bruce Wayne and his alter ego. I personally hope we see a Batman who is at the absolute brink of madness. Just a wrathful, violent hero who discovers through the course of the movie that he's fighting for the wrong reasons. I want to see Patman slowly change from a harbinger of vengeance into a dark champion of true justice.
Justice. The answer's justice.
And yeah, I know Nolan's Batman kind of dipped a toe into those waters, but he was already in control of his rage before he ever donned the cowl. And Snyder's Batman was out for vengeance, but he had zero character growth.
Why did you say that name?
Pattinson and Reeves need to dive deep and show us the pain and bitterness of misdirected rage. And better still, the struggle to reconcile the truth of your legacy and to change. If you've watched any of Pattinson's recent work, you know he has the acting chops to give us incredible depth here. So I have high hopes. Of course, the villain is important too. Paul Dano would not have been my first choice for anyone from Batman's Rogues Gallery, but I'll admit, he's got the raw talent to do something interesting here. We've had a Riddler before, but unlike Batman, Dano doesn't have previously iconic performances to live up to here. No offense, Jim Carrey. Matt Reeves has compared this Riddler to the Zodiac Killer, so my hopes of a strong murder mystery are largely pinned on how this character plays out in the plot. That said, with Penguin and Catwoman also in the cast, I'm not convinced there isn't another secret villain potentially helping Riddler behind the scenes.
Hush, Batman. Hush.
I'm very excited to see where the Batman takes us. If you're excited like I am, and you just can't wait to get your Gotham City fix, then check out my Joker fan film, The Last Laugh, right here. It's good, I promise. And Matt Reeves, if you by some miracle happen to watch this, please consider this film my audition to be your Joker someday.